Hello, my name is Jeffrey Nicholas. I'm an associate professor of philosophy at Providence College. This is one in a series of lectures on Alistair MacIntyre's Dependent Rational Animals, and we will be considering Chapter 9 in this lecture, in which he discusses social relationships and common goods. And so where we have been is talking about our relationship and the continuities between the non-human animal world and the human animal worlds in terms of beliefs and reasons for action, and then understanding what that means in the human animal world. That language gives us the power to step back from our desires, to evaluate those desires, and to evaluate our reasons for actions. And that those capacities, those very human capacities for developing into independent practical reasoners, means that we are involved in a series of relationships of giving and receiving. Without those relationships of giving and receiving, we never develop the capacity for uh, independent practical reasoning. So what we're looking at now then is, what is the nature of those relationships and what are the common goods that are involved in there? So we're all involved in a variety of networks of relationships of giving and receiving. These are necessary for us to develop into independent practical reasoners. So we can talk about the relationships of giving and receiving within the family, between the family and the school, and the child and the teacher, and between, as the child develops, between the child and his or her peers, as well as the relationships between the parents and the extended family, as well as the parents and their friends who have children. All of those are part of our relationships, and we continue to develop those relationships as we mature. And so we volunteer for different organizations in high school or in college. Perhaps we work on the college newspaper, or work with the Newman Center in college, and then we develop into work relationships as well. And so all of these relationships help us to learn how to stand back from our desires. So if we get involved in, for instance, a sport like baseball, or another practice like dance, right? Part of what we're doing is learning how to stand back from our desires for immediate gratification, because all I really want to do is hit that baseball with the bat, but I have to wait for the ball to come to me and be in the right position. So that requires temperance, but also to be able to stand my ground and be able to hit the ball with the bat when it gets into the right position. And similarly with dance, sometimes all I want to do is do a leap, but I've got to learn how to walk, as it were, before I can leap in the dance. But then I also have to be prepared to have the courage to leap when necessary. And we see that, for example, in Dirty Dancing, Babe doesn't have the courage to leap when she's supposed to. Here, when we talk about relationships of giving and receiving, we're not talking about strict reciprocity. We may not be able to give back to our parents as much as they have given to us. Maybe we're never able to give back to them at all. And same thing, they should not expect for us to give back to them as much as they're giving to us. And we can talk about that in terms of our friendships, and we can see those kinds of non-parallel situations where sometimes we must give more to some friends than to others, but we also receive from other friends more than we give, etc. Right? So it's not always the same people that we give to, and not always the same people that we get from. And the changes can be in quantity and in quality. So these are incommensurable. We can't compare the oranges that we give to some friends to the apples that we get from our teachers, right? And sometimes we don't even know who gives to us or who we are giving to, right? So what is necessary, however, for reciprocity is for there to be large networks of giving and receiving in our world, so that everyone's needs are satisfied in that way. Now, of course, networks can come with injustices, and these might be individual injustices or injustices within the system. And of course, we're all aware of a variety of defective systems in the modern world, particularly in the United States, that do that harm those relationships of giving and receiving. So we might talk about the educational system that prefaces the tax system that allows wealthy neighborhoods to have much better school districts than do poorer neighborhoods. We also might talk about the way that certain citizens are treated by the police or other authority figures than other citizens are treated, right? And so a part of what it means to be involved in these uh, networks of giving and receiving is that sometimes we have to recognize that the system is defective, and we have to recognize our own failures in those cases, right? Where we might be blind to the defectiveness of that system and be able to listen to others who are harmed by those defects. And of course, in the case of Colin Kaepernick, that simply didn't happen. He was released from his contract with the football team he was playing for, and he has no regrets for standing up for the rights of Black people against police officers, and we've seen how much worse it's become since he's done that. But the capitalist system within our world oftentimes covers over those defects and blames them on individuals rather than on the system. So we have to be aware of power, and often that power within a system is an effect of money more than anything else, right? So institutions are always structures of unequal distribution of power, and sometimes they're designed to mask power, right? So whether we're playing a sport, right, there's going to be unequal distributions of powers there between the coach and the player, but sometimes that the institutions that are designed to support those can mask the power that is being used there. And so we're all aware of the Me Too movement and the way that Hollywood, for instance, has masked the ability of producers of movies to use their power to harass or assault women. Okay. And so we must be taught to be aware of these, and we must often learn to listen to those who have been in situations where we can learn from their experiences. Okay. And of course, the worst part of institutions is when they serve power and not the relationships of giving and receiving. And oftentimes we ignore that because we benefit from the power there. So whether that is because of the school system that we belong to, or whether it's because of the job that we participate in, oftentimes the power serves our own interest, even if we're not the ones exercising that power. Okay. Rather, what we want to do is change those institutions so that they serve the relationships of giving and receiving upon which we all depend. Now, McIntyre talks about the family as an example here. He also talks about the nation state. And in this example, he talks about the father originally abandoning his dream to be an artist and becoming a lawyer in order to support his family. And then he demands that the child now becomes a artist because he never could become the artist that he wanted to. And here, there's a variety of failures that are involved. The parent is a bad parent because he's asking something unjust. Just because he's given to his child part of his life does not mean that the child owes certain things to the parent. The child owes something to the parent, but not necessarily what he or she does in life, right? And part of the being a bad parent might be simply being self-deceived in what I want, or just simply trying to deceive others in terms of what they want. I often hear students tell me, for instance, that they wanted to major in English or they wanted to major in art, but their parent wouldn't allow them to, they wouldn't pay for their education if they majored in that, and they ended up majoring in business. That is part of what's involved here in terms of being a bad parent. But also there's a failure on the child here, right? So the child has to become independent, and that means having the courage to follow his or her own desires once those desires are well thought out, right? Once they've learned how to stand back from present desires and develop those desires that are necessary for living a human life, right? And they're also mistaken in what they owe others, okay? And insofar as we participate in those networks that allow some people to exhibit power rather than supporting networks of giving and receiving, we are part of a system that undermines the capacities for individuals to develop as practical reasoners. Okay. So, what does it mean to be independent? It means having an ability and a willingness to evaluate our reasons. This should sound fairly familiar. We've been talking about this the last couple of lectures, right? And being able to act in ways that we can justify our actions to ourselves and to others, right? Now, this doesn't require advanced degrees in logic. People do this all the time without ever going to college or having a proper education. They're able to articulate their reasons because they've developed the virtues and because they've been part of practices in which they have developed their ability to reason, right? So we do those within practices, not by studying logic, right? And of course, part of what's important here is being able to debate with others about what is good for all of us, okay? And so when we've seen a variety of protests against police over the last 5 or 6 years, right, what's going on there is that there is a system of power, right, the police state, which is refusing to contribute to this debate or even be part of the debate. And so the people who are protesting, whether they're Black Lives Matter or whether they're No DAPL or whether they're part of some other organization, they're inviting a debate here and an invitation to become independent practical reasoners. And what's happening is forces of the state are suppressing that capacity for debate, and so suppressing the ability to be independent practical reasoners. And in that case, everyone fails to flourish. And so part of what it means to look for a common good is to determine what we want together so that I can determine what I want. So when you first get married, right, there's a series of negotiations and deliberations about what it means to be a family and what we're going to do in particular situations. And then that helps the individual to understand what he or she wants to do within the context of this shared deliberation about what it is for us to be family. And that's true as well in terms of the community. What is it that we want from our police, and what is it that we want from our community in supporting education and services for the mentally ill and services for those who are simply hungry and don't have any other options? Okay. So our good is determined only insofar as we make the good of others our own good, right? And so if we ignore the goods of others, if we ignore the goods of the poor people in the neighborhood next to us where they don't have the same tax system that supports good education, or we ignore the Black people that we work with because we're not pulled over and taken out of the car and shot like Black people are, then we fail to understand our own good, right? Because we can't live in a peaceful society, for instance, something that we want because we don't understand what it means to be a peaceful society. And so to flourish, I need both to be independent, but also to be able to rely upon others when I need them to care for me. And that's something, for instance, that Breonna Taylor, who was shot in Kentucky, could not rely on. The police simply did a no warning knock on her door, and then they started shooting into her apartment and killed her, and they were at the wrong apartment, right? And so they failed to develop a system through which they could articulate with others what the good is for everyone. But that does not mean that the individual is subsumed into the common good, right? The individual has the ability to develop her or his capacity for independence, right? And that's something that the police denied Breonna Taylor. And of course, what we want in a community is for people to come together and be part of that community. Quickly, I want to say what's necessary for deliberation within a community, and that is the ability of each person to speak with candor, and also not to take more time than is justified for the importance of their point that's being made. Certainly, speaking with candor about the value of life is necessary, and people who are having their lives taken away because of membership in one group, is necessary to give them more time than those who have other less important concerns, right? And that requires virtues. One of the things that we have to be wary about here, though, is to think about these relationships as some kind of economic exchange. That is the opposite of speaking with candor and giving everyone a voice in the community. And so we have to be worried about the vices that we develop here, including over sentimentality and reducing human action to economic activity.